Hi, my name is Beth Nichols, and I am the Director of Operations at Teen Life. Teen Life is a local nonprofit, and at Teen Life, we provide support groups for middle school and high school students that occur on the school campus during the school day. We also offer virtual groups for middle school and high school students that are occurring currently on Sunday nights. I'm glad you've joined us today to talk a little bit about needs your students have at Medlin, and also to talk specifically about teens, trauma, and how you can help them. So, we're going to start by talking about 10 ways teens have experienced trauma this year. And then we're going to walk through a few ideas and tips that you, as parents or as school staff, can use to connect with teens and to help process trauma or difficult situations that they have faced, especially in the last year. First, we're going to start by defining trauma. We're going to use a pretty broad definition. So, we're going to say trauma is any event that overwhelms. I know it's broad, but I want to use a really broad definition because we are impacted by things that overwhelm us. And the reality of this world, and we know this hopefully as adults, is what is overwhelming for me might not be overwhelming for you, or vice versa. What's overwhelming for my child might not be overwhelming for your child. But we also know that we've all felt overwhelmed, especially at some points in the last year. And we want to kind of acknowledge that those feelings of being overwhelmed have impacted us and make a decision on how we can move forward when we have those feelings. So, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind if we talk about things that have been traumatic or life changing in the last year is COVID-19. We're in a worldwide pandemic. We can't travel in the ways that we used to. We wear masks. We cannot enter all stores in the same way that we used to. We had to stay home. Schools shut down. Especially the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of fear. We weren't totally sure how COVID spread. We weren't sure if you could get it from touching things or if you got it from eating food from other people. We weren't sure how sick it was going to make you or not sick it was going to make you. We just knew that it was a problem and we weren't sure where to go. Now, looking back over a year ago, we have a lot more information that we just didn't have then. But as parents and as teachers and as counselors, and even for our students, it's a great shift that we've had and walked through in the last year. As an adult, I will probably always remember 2020 as a different year for us. And that's going to be true for our students. They're going to grow up and into adulthood. Their experiences walking through a pandemic will stay with them. And the lessons that they've learned and the things they've experienced will stay with them. So, pandemic, definitely a source of trauma or feeling overwhelmed for our students. The second thing that's been very difficult and overwhelming for a lot of our students has been all the changes with school. We put virtual learning here. I'm sure, as most of you know, most of our kids at home went on spring break last year and they didn't go back to school for a minimum of 6 months. What a significant change. I'm in eighth grade. Every year for the last 8 years, I get up 9 months out of the year and I go to school. And then I come home. And all of a sudden, none of that's happening. But beyond that, not only am I not going into school, I'm now expected to learn at home on a computer screen. Sometimes it's because I'm watching a video. Sometimes it's on a Zoom call. Sometimes I can hear. Sometimes my internet's not working. There's so many new challenges, and our teachers and school staff are working so hard to overcome those, but it was very, very different for our middle school students, for our high school students. There was no, I need to raise my hand and get a question answered. Some of our students were working at home because we, as parents, are essential workers and we had to get up and still go to work. Some of our students were looking after younger brothers and sisters while we went to work and helping them with their virtual learning. But even when we returned to school, schools look a lot different than they used to. For a lot of our elementary school students, they didn't get to play on the playground for months. They could go outside, but they couldn't be on the playground equipment. Or when you're in the classroom, you have desks and you have masks and you have plexiglass dividers and you have assigned seating in places where you had the freedom to choose, but you don't anymore. And so all of those changes in school has resulted in a lot of students that are really struggling. In our virtual support groups and in our in-person groups, I can tell you story after story about students who said, school was fine. Like I didn't have missing assignments. I never struggled to really understand or comprehend assignments. And I'm having a really hard time right now. Like I can't seem to put the pieces together. And that's overwhelming for a lot of our students. Number 3, athletics. If you're a parent like me, I have children that were supposed to play soccer last spring. None of my children actually played a successful soccer season. Instead, they stayed home as everything kind of shut down. We adjusted sports. We've adjusted football or volleyball, or we're able to play in the band, but we're not allowed to have our parents come sit and watch. We're doing virtual recordings. For a lot of our students, athletics is a way that they burn energy. It's a place they feel like they're successful. They use it to connect to their peers. It's a place where they have positive relationships with other adults. And all of that was taken away. For some of our high school students, their ability to pursue athletic scholarships, college opportunities regarding sports were also changed dramatically. And that has impacted our students, whether you're playing on your school team or you're playing a rec league or a travel team, it doesn't matter. All those shifts have impacted our students. Number 4, special events were canceled. The picture here shows graduation. Y'all are all middle school parents at least. Maybe you have some older students that were in high school that missed out on things like prom and graduation. But those special events go beyond just the big things that come to mind. I have a 5th grader, and she missed her clap out for the last time that she's been at the elementary school that she's been in her whole life, right? So it seems like a small thing, but it was a really big deal for her. Maybe it's I missed my special end of the year award ceremony, and that's a really important thing for my child. It could be I go to camp. I go every summer to the same athletic camp. I go every summer to this church camp. I participate in this summer program every single year, and none of those were opportunities for me. And I hated missing it because they were important to me. It could be birthday parties. In our family, birthdays are kind of a big deal. We have family that come in from out of town. We celebrate and we spend the day, and you get to pick your favorite restaurant for dinner. And a lot of those things had to change. Those just weren't options anymore. And so it's missing out on those events, those key things that we kind of mark our years by as we move forward. And they lost those. Some of those have started to come back. Some are back, but they just look a lot different. And so we got to be aware of what are the things that are really important to my students that they missed out on. And you can't really know if you don't ask. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. Number 5, loss. You guys, loss can go far beyond family. It can go far beyond death. The loss of being able to play your favorite sport, the loss of a really special birthday party when you turn 13, the loss of a quinceañera, but also the loss of loved ones. Almost everyone I know knows of someone who has passed away in the last year. It might be a family member, it might be a friend, it might be just an acquaintance, it might be a mentor of some kind for either you or your students. But learning to grieve those losses has looked a lot different in the last year. Funeral sizes were limited. You couldn't come and get support in some of the same ways that we are used to prior to COVID. You're not going to have probably 20 people over in your home for a lot of us. That's not something we were comfortable with. And so it was a hard time to lose someone because then you don't have some of those support systems that you've always had in place, especially when they were limited by different mandates in the county, in the city, and the states where we live. Number 6, racial injustice. I know people fall in a lot of different places on this topic. So, regardless of where you land when it comes to the discussion of race and racial injustice, I want you to take a step back and realize that our students are watching. They're paying attention. They see on social media, they hear on the news, they are talking with their peers about the different racial dynamics that are at play in our country right now. And so, teenagers are aware, and often they're more comfortable talking about it than adults are. But they've seen people march and they've seen protests, and they've heard us as adults talk about our reaction to those protests and some of the changes that have come out from businesses and corporations in different communities and a variety of responses. And so be aware that your students are watching and they are trying to figure out, as is developmentally appropriate for a middle school and high school student, what do I think about this? What do I believe about this? How does this impact me? How does it impact my friends? And so take a step back for a minute and just realize they're watching and they see, and that's been a very big backdrop to the things that are happening around them, especially in the middle of a pandemic. Number 7, we put insecurity at home. As adults, sometimes we don't want to be like, our home's insecure. No, that's not what we think. They're fine. We take care of them. They're well fed. Sometimes it's really important as adults that we take a step back and we really look around. I'm a working mom. So I went from going to work every day and taking my kids to school every day to I'm working remotely from my house while I'm trying to educate students using computer systems that I'm not as familiar with, and they definitely aren't familiar with, while trying to manage 3 different Zoom calls at the same time. And so my stress level was higher than it normally is. And my kids can pick up on that. Your kids can pick up when your stress level is higher. There's a higher risk of abuse or neglect for a lot of the kids in our lives or the kids that are around us. There is a lot of research, and even Cook's Children's put out some numbers. Shortly after the pandemic started, they had seen a very noticeable increase of children being treated for incidences related to physical abuse at the hospital here in Tarrant County. And so even if it isn't impacting your household, it's impacting your students' friends. It's impacting people they know or their extended family. Also, you have people that are losing jobs, they're changing jobs, job responsibilities look different. Essential workers have different stresses. Maybe your income shifted. All of those things changed, and the students are very aware of that. And so think through for a minute, what are the things that have changed at our house in the last year, and how has that impacted my students? Number 8, political unrest. Again, this doesn't matter if you're on the right or you're on the left, if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, if you're an independent, if you're somewhere in the middle. Our students have watched during the last year as the country has walked through a very divisive presidential election. They've heard us as adults talk about our current president and our previous president. They've heard us talk about pros and cons. They've seen us rant and fight, sometimes in person, sometimes on social media. Even for those of us that might be a little less political, they have still seen and heard those conversations and had them in the classroom with their peers. We have a lot of students talk about things they hear at home about politics. Also, all of our students watched as a group of protesters stormed the Capitol and some of the fallouts from that. And so a lot of our students have questions about why things have happened, or they have questions about who's making decisions and political processes. And depending on how they process that, they might need some adults to step in and help them walk through those circumstances. Number 9, this is disconnection from others. This goes beyond just disconnection from you as a family member. This is really about who are the friends that your students wanted to connect with and did not have the opportunity to during the pandemic. Who are the adults that are important to them that they weren't able to see? Maybe it's my student wasn't able to see their grandparents for 6 months and they lived down the road from us, but it wasn't a risk we were willing to take. Maybe it was my daughter's best friend. I don't feel like we can spend the time together that they used to. Um, I think as adults, we've all realized that a Zoom call isn't the same as having coffee with my best friend. A it's not a bad thing. It's just not the same. Virtual doesn't take the place of face to face. The main thing where we see this is NPR has put out some really interesting research. Cook Children's has touched on this even as recently as about a week ago. They reported that they had treated more children and youth for suicide attempts than they ever have in a month before here in Tarrant County. Um, the research can't confirm, but during the pandemic, they feel like mental health concerns, specifically anxiety and depression, have increased astronomically among teens and young people as a result of all the challenges that the pandemic has presented for them. And having that support system and those connection pieces really matters to students. They're learning to be their own person and to reach out and develop new relationships with other adults and peers, which is what we want them to do, but they lost the ability to do that in so many ways. Last, we put state of emergencies. This is a really broad topic, but what I think of the most is Snowmageddon. At my house, we were without power for several days. We have good friends who are without water or who have busted pipes or who have experienced hailstorms or tornadoes. In other parts of the country, you've had wildfires like in California. You've had a whole wide variety of really things that are beyond our control. I can't control that we got covered in ice for a week. I can't control that it's thunderstorm season in Texas. And when you're already experiencing higher levels of stress, these states of emergencies, these natural disasters, these events you can't control, add to that in a way maybe they didn't before. So, what's really important for us to remember, and as we go through this at Teen Life, and I personally, as a parent, y'all, our kids have what they need to survive and to succeed and to make good choices. So part of what we do at Teen Life in our support groups is we try to really ask good questions because we really believe students have the capability to make good decisions and to process through the decisions and the factors that impact them if you simply ask the right questions and give them space. We live in a culture that is very go, 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 go. You need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do that. And sometimes we just need to create space for our teens to process through. So, believing that they have a lot of skills and abilities to make those decisions, how can we help them? So, now what? The first one that's listed on the sheet, number 1, is check in. Y'all, I know it sounds really basic, but talk to your student. A lot of times, students don't want to sit and talk to you face to face, they don't want to have to look you in the eyes. But maybe it's driving in a car. Maybe it's they come in and they sit on the counter while you're cooking dinner. So you're engaged, but you're not just staring at them. Maybe for a lot of our students, it's late at night. They want to come in and have a serious conversation with you at 10:30. Like, do we have the capability to have those opportunities and do those conversations when our students are ready to do them? But beyond that, ask them questions. Hey, how are you handling stress right now? What's working for you? When you're feeling overwhelmed, what helps you? How's math class going? What is the hardest part? What can I do to help you? Also ask, who are you talking to? Like, how's it going in your friendships? What other adults do you feel like you could go to if you needed something and you couldn't felt like you couldn't talk to me or to another parent? Who do you have a special connection with? Maybe it's the grandparents. Maybe it's their aunt and uncle. Maybe it's their football coach. Um, but the key to checking in is that you got to be consistent. If I come in and ask you questions once, I mean, that's good, but I need you to come back as parents and as teachers. Check in all the time because students who know that you're willing to check in are more likely to come back and have hard conversations and allow you to some space to help them process when something is really on their mind. At Teen Life, we do an activity in all of our middle school groups. We call it Fist to Five. It's such an easy activity and it's a way to check in with your students and you don't even have to have them talk to you. So if you have a student that's just in a funk and you're not sure what's going on, you can do something really simple. For your new activity, on a scale from fist to five, with fist being the worst day ever and five being the best day ever, how was your day? Two, a one, a fist, a four. That gives you an idea of where you're starting. Maybe it's how's your stress level right now? Fist is it's really low and things are going great. Five, I'm really stressed out and I'm not sure where I need to go. And they can give you a number. Three, I'm kind of in the middle. And that gives you as an adult a simple starting point. You can ask about any topic, but that way you can do. I also encourage you if you're talking to them and you're asking a question at our house, it's always, I'll answer the question too. How was your day? Mine's probably about a three. I had a hard day at work, but I had a really good night at home. Like, what does that look like for you as an adult to share as well when you're checking in? The second thing that we would encourage you guys to do is celebrate the little things. We as adults get busy and we have to-do lists. I'm a professional list maker. I'm really good at it and I'm proud of it sometimes. And I really like marking things off my list. But sometimes when I'm trying to mark things off my list, I miss the things that happen around me. And so, what are the small things that you can point out to your kids that you see them do? For example, hey, I saw the girl in front of you trip today on the way to the car, and I was so proud of how you helped her get back up. Maybe it's, hey, I saw that you brought home an 85 on that math test. I know that you worked really hard to get an 85 because I've watched you study and practice and try to figure it out. Maybe it's, hey, I really appreciate that you helped me pick up the plates after dinner. Those small celebrations, those pointing out of their strengths, just really two things. One, it continues to build connection between you and your child. And two, it lets them know that you see the strengths in them, not just the places that they messed up, not just the places where they wish they had done something different and feel like they have to come to you with it. And so use your eyes as the adult, as the teacher, as the parent to really point out, hey, I see you and I'm proud of how hard you're working, how dedicated you've been, how you use wisdom in a situation. They need that benefit and they need to hear it from us. Number three, encourage connection. We've talked a little bit about this with checking in, but this is not just checking in with us as adults and parents. This is where are the places that I'm comfortable letting my teen reconnect with the people and things that are important to them. Is it, I finally feel comfortable allowing my child to go play soccer again? Is it, my grandparents are vaccinated now, and so what my kid really needs is a weekend with her grandparents? Could it be, um, I feel like we are in a position to go back to a church or community event? Could it be, my child really enjoys going to the rec center and playing basketball with their friends, and I feel like we're in a position we can do that now? This looks different for everyone right now. And it looked different for me 6 months ago versus what I'm comfortable with now. And it'll probably look different 6 months from now because things are constantly shifting. And there's still a lot of unknown with the pandemic, right? But where are the places that they can connect to the people and the things that are really important to them, especially ones that we had to stop for whatever reason? We were going to soccer practice and we're not anymore. we used to see this group of people every Friday night. I have a friend that does a Friday night supper club. And so they would bring their families together every Friday night and they had to stop that. So what are the things and the places where you feel comfortable that you can encourage connection with peers and with adults? That face-to-face connection is so important. The last thing that I would encourage you to do is find and be aware of resources. This goes several different ways. This is finding resources for your child if they need help. We've touched on this a little bit. There's been a lot of increased anxiety and depression, suicide ideations, some self injury behavior. Those numbers have all increased in the last year among students. Um, so, if those are things that are happening in your home or with your child or with a child that's important to you or a student that's important to you, try to find the resources that you need. You will feel more confident if you know how to offer help once those conversations starts. But finding resources goes beyond that. Maybe it's I need to find a rec league softball team that's different because the one we've always played on is not playing still. Maybe it's I need to find resources for me as an adult so that I'm in a better position to help my student. Students pay attention, and if we as adults talk about utilizing our resources and we're not willing to do it ourselves, they see right through it. And so, who are the resources that you have available to you? What are the resources your child needs? At Teen Life, we do groups at Medlin, and we've worked with your counselors. And I know that if you reach out to the counselors at Medlin, they are more than happy to help you process through and find resources that you might need for your family or for your student. And if they aren't sure, they know what direction they can point you to. So utilize the school, utilize the contacts that you know, get on the internet and look, trying to find where are the places that I can find resources and support that either I need or my student needs, because it makes a difference. I'm about to wrap it up. I'm really excited that you've joined us tonight for Medlin Cares. I hope this presentation was helpful for you just to think about ways that your child might have experienced some traumatic events and ways that you as an adult can just help them process. Um, Being there and connecting with your student is the most important thing that you can do. So try your best to keep an open dialogue and conversation with your child. You won't regret it, and neither will they. I hope you guys have a great rest of the night, and we will see you later.